Way back in 1943, right in the middle of World War II, an idea was born that had nothing to do with the battlefield. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't a new technology for the war. It was just a single, really radical thought, an idea that all started with one seemingly impossible question. I mean, think about that for a second. Can you take the most complicated thing we know of, the human brain, with all of our memories, our feelings, our creativity, and boil it all down to a simple mathematical rule? It sounds crazy, right? Almost absurd. But that audacious question is the exact spark that lit the fuse for the AI revolution we're all living in today. So, to really get just how big of a deal this question was, we need to rewind the clock and see the world it was born into. Okay, so picture this. The entire planet is in absolute turmoil. But in some quiet university halls, a couple of guys were obsessed with a totally different kind of battle. Not a war for land or power, but a quest to understand thought itself. So who were these people asking this wild question? Well, they were a pretty unlikely pair. Their backgrounds were polar opposites, but their minds were about to meet and create one incredibly powerful theory. So on one hand, you've got Warren McCulloch. He's this seasoned academic, totally dedicated to figuring out how the mind works. And on the other hand, you have Walter Pitts, this brilliant young kid who literally ran away from home just so he could study. An odd couple, for sure, but when these two got together, wow, they were about to change everything. Now here's where it gets really, really interesting. How did they tackle this huge challenge? Well, they decided to simplify the most complex object in the universe down to its most basic, fundamental action. So, we all know our brains are made up of billions of these tiny little cells called neurons, right? They're the basic building blocks of every thought we have. But McCulloch had this totally wild idea about how they actually operate. He suggested that at its core, every single neuron is basically just a simple switch. It's either firing, which you can think of as on or a 1, or it's quiet, off or a 0. That's it, it's that simple. A binary choice happening billions of times all at once. And here's the absolute kicker. McCulloch was convinced this wasn't just random chaos. He believed that underneath all that on and off switching, there was a hidden logic. A predictable mathematical rule that was running the whole show. So McCulloch and Pitts actually did it. They proved their theory, they wrote a paper, and they published it. But here's the real plot twist in this whole story. What happened next was, well, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Their big, game-changing paper comes out in 1943. And for years, it was basically invisible. The scientific community just ignored it. It literally sat on shelves collecting dust. It's like the world just wasn't ready to hear what they had to say. And this is what they came up with. They created a mathematical model, a logical equation that showed how any thought you could possibly put into words could, in theory, be recreated by a network of these simple on-off neurons. It was basically a blueprint for a thinking machine, just sitting there waiting for someone to find it. And you know what? Eventually, someone did find it. And when that happened, it lit the spark for the revolution that we are all living through right now. Decades later, when researchers finally blew the dust off that old paper, it inspired a massive breakthrough. They built the very thing McCulloch and Pitts had only dreamed about, the world's first artificial neural network. A neural network is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a computer system designed to work just like the human brain. It uses layers of these digital neurons that switch on and off, and they pass information to each other using mathematical rules. Yep, the exact same principle from that paper back in 1943. So this one single, beautiful idea that you could model thought with simple on-off switches running on logic, that was the seed. And from that tiny seed, a whole forest was about to grow into what we all know today as artificial intelligence. Seriously, everything from the assistant on your phone to self-driving cars, you can trace their family tree all the way back to that one dusty, forgotten paper from 1943. And that just leaves us with this one fascinating question, doesn't it? The entire world of modern AI came from an idea that people ignored for decades. It just makes you wonder, what other revolutionary ideas are sitting on a shelf somewhere right now, just gathering dust, waiting for the right person to come along and change the world all over again?